Faith as a foundation. The rhythmic clang of hammer against metal echoed through the nascent community, a counterpoint to the mournful sigh of the wind whistling through the skeletal remains of buildings. Sarah, her hands raw and blistered, paused her work, the sliver of sun catching the tear tracks on her dust-streaked face. The weight of loss, of everything she'd lost, threatened to crush her, a familiar ache in her chest that mirrored the ache in her weary bones. Yet, even as despair threatened to engulf her, a flicker of something brighter ignited within her heart. It was a small thing, a tiny ember of hope, but it was there, warming her from the inside. Elder Michael, his face etched with the wisdom of years and the weight of countless prayers, approached her. He didn't speak immediately, but simply placed a calloused hand on her shoulder, offering silent comfort. His presence was a tangible manifestation of God's grace, a silent affirmation that they were not alone in their struggle. He had witnessed the devastation firsthand, had felt the sting of personal loss, yet his faith remained unshaken, a beacon in the encroaching darkness. "Sarah," he said softly, his voice carrying the gentle strength that had become a hallmark of his leadership, "the rebuilding isn't just about bricks and mortar. It's about rebuilding our hearts, our spirits, our faith." His words resonated deep within her. She knew he was right. The physical reconstruction was important, but it was meaningless without the spiritual foundation, the unshakable faith that held them together. Their shared belief in God's unwavering love and promises was the mortar that bound their community, stronger than any concrete. It was their shared faith that fueled their tireless efforts, that transformed despair into determination. It was their faith that allowed them to see not just the destruction, but the potential for renewal, for a future bathed in God's grace. Later that evening, as the community gathered for their nightly prayer meeting, a young woman named Emily shared her testimony. She had lost her family in the devastation, left alone and utterly heartbroken. She had contemplated giving up, letting despair consume her. But then, she said, she had remembered a verse from Psalm 23. "Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me." These words had become her lifeline, anchoring her to a faith that transcended her grief and gave her the strength to carry on. Emily's testimony was a testament to the transformative power of faith in the face of unimaginable loss. Her words ignited a fire within the hearts of others, reinforcing their shared commitment to rebuild not only their physical surroundings, but also their spiritual foundation. Many shared similar experiences, offering testimonies of hope and perseverance, their voices weaving a tapestry of faith and resilience. Elder Michael, drawing upon his profound knowledge of Scripture, spoke eloquently about the biblical accounts of rebuilding and restoration. He reminded them of the story of Nehemiah, who rebuilt the walls of Jerusalem despite facing seemingly insurmountable obstacles. He spoke of the unwavering faith of the Israelites, who, despite their trials and tribulations, always found strength in their belief in God's promises. He emphasized that their current situation, though devastating, was not unique. Throughout history, God's people had faced destruction and despair, yet had always emerged stronger, their faith refined in the crucible of suffering. The following days were marked by a palpable shift in their collective spirit. The work continued, but it was now infused with a deeper purpose, a renewed sense of meaning. The acts of clearing rubble, constructing shelters, and tending to the injured were no longer mere acts of survival, but acts of worship, expressions of their unwavering faith. Their faith wasn't a passive belief. It was an active force that shaped their actions and guided their decisions. It manifested in their compassion for one another, their willingness to share their limited resources, and their relentless pursuit of justice and reconciliation. They didn't just rebuild homes, they rebuilt relationships, fostering a community characterized by love, forgiveness, and unwavering commitment to one another. One day, while surveying the progress, Elder Michael noticed a young boy, no older than 10, sketching in the dirt with a charred piece of wood. The boy, whose name was Thomas, was an orphan, having lost his parents in the initial catastrophe. His drawing depicted a vibrant city, a utopian vision of their new community, replete with flourishing gardens and bustling marketplaces. It was a testament to the child's unwavering hope, a powerful symbol of their collective aspiration. Elder Michael knelt beside the boy, studying his drawing. He saw not just childish drawings, but a representation of their faith in action, their faith manifesting itself in a vision of hope for a better future. He realized that their rebuilding efforts were not just about restoring what was lost, but about creating something new, something better, something infused with the transformative power of God's love and grace. The community's faith extended beyond their immediate needs. They established a school where children could learn not only academics, but also the values of faith, compassion, and service. They created a communal garden where they cultivated not only food, but also a sense of unity and shared purpose. They established a system for sharing resources fairly and equitably, ensuring that everyone had access to the necessities of life. Their faith was not blind. It was a conscious choice, a deliberate commitment to live according to God's will, even amidst the devastation. It involved acknowledging their pain and suffering, but it also involved embracing hope, forgiveness, and the unwavering belief that God had a plan, even in the midst of chaos. They understood that their faith wasn't a shield against suffering, but a source of strength to navigate it. As days turned into weeks, and weeks into months, the community blossomed. The physical transformation was remarkable, but the spiritual transformation was even more profound. Their faith, once tested and refined in the crucible of suffering, had become a powerful force for good, driving their rebuilding efforts and shaping their collective identity. They had not only survived the apocalypse, they had transcended it, forging a new community built on the unshakable foundation of faith, love, and hope. The once desolate landscape was slowly but surely being reborn, not just as a physical testament to human resilience, but as a spiritual beacon in a world desperately in need of hope. The work was far from over. Challenges still lay ahead, but their faith remained their guiding star, illuminating their path forward. They were building more than just a community. They were building a testament to the enduring power of God's grace and love. And in the quiet moments of prayer and reflection, they could hear the whispers of hope, a promise of a brighter future, a future secured not by human strength, but by divine grace. Their faith was not just a belief. It was a living, breathing entity, the very foundation upon which they were rebuilding their lives, their community, and their future. Compassion and service. The scent of wood smoke and simmering stew hung heavy in the air, a comforting aroma that belied the harsh realities of their existence. The community, once a disparate collection of survivors clinging to life, had evolved into something far more profound. It was a tapestry woven with threads of faith, resilience, and a burgeoning compassion that touched even the most hardened hearts. Sarah, her hands still bearing the marks of her labor, found herself drawn to the newcomers, a weary family huddled near the makeshift infirmary, their eyes filled with a mixture of fear and hope. The children, thin and pale, clung to their parents, their small hands clutching tattered toys. Their story was a familiar one: loss, displacement, and the constant struggle for survival. But what set them apart was the palpable desperation etched on their faces, a desperation that resonated deeply within Sarah's soul. She remembered the depths of her own despair, the crushing weight of grief that had threatened to consume her. It was a memory that fueled her compassion, a compassion that flowed freely, untainted by the bitterness that had once threatened to harden her heart. That evening, as the community gathered for their nightly prayer meeting, Sarah shared the family story. The words hung in the air, a simple account of suffering, yet heavy with unspoken needs. Immediately, a wave of empathy washed over the assembled people. Hands shot up, offering assistance, practical and spiritual alike. One woman, a former nurse, volunteered to tend to the children's immediate medical needs. Others offered food, clothing, and a place to sleep. A young man, skilled in carpentry, promised to build them a small shelter, a haven from the elements. The compassion wasn't limited to material aid. The community recognized the deep-seated emotional wounds that needed healing. Elder Thomas, a man whose wisdom was as deep as his faith, spent hours counseling the parents, offering solace and guidance drawn from scripture and years of life experience. He listened patiently to their fears, their anxieties, and their unspoken questions, offering words of hope and reassurance, reminding them of God's unwavering love and promises. The children, initially shy and withdrawn, were quickly embraced by the community's younger members. They shared their simple toys, their stories, and their laughter, weaving the newcomers into the fabric of their lives. The children's innocent joy served as a balm to the adults' anxieties, a gentle reminder that even amidst devastation, life could still hold beauty and wonder. This act of compassion wasn't merely an emotional response. It was a deliberate choice, rooted in their Christian faith. Their belief in the inherent worth of every human being, created in God's image, fueled their selfless acts of service. It was a tangible demonstration of God's love, a reflection of His grace extended to those most in need. They understood that their own survival depended not solely on their ability to find food and shelter, but on their willingness to extend kindness and mercy to their fellow human beings. The act of giving was as much a blessing for the giver as it was for the receiver. As they poured out their hearts and their resources to help the newcomers, a sense of purpose filled their souls. The weight of their own suffering seemed lighter, replaced by a joy that transcended their difficult circumstances. They were living out their faith, not just in their prayers and worship, but in their daily lives. Days turned into weeks, and the newcomers became integral members of the community. The father, once consumed by grief and despair, found purpose in helping others. He used his past skills as a mechanic to repair the community's aging vehicles. The mother, her spirits lifted by the kindness shown to her family, utilized her culinary skills to enrich their shared meals. Their children, now blossoming under the nurturing care of their new friends, brought laughter and a renewed sense of hope to the entire settlement. This act of compassion, however, wasn't a one-off event. It became the defining characteristic of their community. Word of their kindness spread, attracting more survivors, each with their own stories of hardship and loss. The community grew, not just in numbers, but in its capacity for empathy and service. They established a system for identifying those most vulnerable, ensuring that no one was overlooked, that no one was left to suffer alone. They created a network of support, assigning individuals to provide ongoing care to the elderly, the sick, and the disabled. They organized regular visits to the injured and those experiencing mental distress, sharing not only practical assistance, but emotional support and spiritual encouragement. They recognized that the wounds of the apocalypse ran deep, extending beyond physical injuries to encompass psychological trauma and emotional devastation. Their approach was holistic. They addressed physical needs with practical solutions, providing food, shelter, clothing, and medical care. But they also addressed emotional and spiritual needs with equal care, understanding that true healing involved nurturing the whole person, body, mind, and spirit. Their faith served as the cornerstone of this compassionate ministry, guiding their actions and shaping their responses. Their faith wasn't a passive belief. It was an active, transformative force. It propelled them to extend mercy and grace to those who had suffered as they had. It reminded them that their trials and tribulations were not meant to isolate them, but to unite them in a shared experience of hope and resilience. The community became a testament to the transformative power of love, a visible manifestation of God's grace in the face of overwhelming adversity. The community's dedication to service wasn't limited to their immediate surroundings. As their resources increased, they expanded their reach, extending aid to neighboring communities, sharing their knowledge and resources. They established a communication network, exchanging vital information, providing assistance where needed, and building bridges of support across the ravaged landscape. This wasn't simply an act of charity. It was a profound expression of their faith, an affirmation of their belief in the inherent dignity and value of every human being. They understood that God's love extended beyond the boundaries of their own community, encompassing all those who suffered in the aftermath of the apocalypse. Their actions were a powerful testament to their faith, a living embodiment of the gospel message, a message of love, hope, and redemption. The rhythmic clang of hammers and the comforting aroma of wood smoke continued to fill the air, now accompanied by the sounds of laughter, the murmur of conversation, and the quiet hum of prayer. The once desolate landscape was slowly but surely being transformed, not only by the tireless efforts of its inhabitants, but by the grace of God and their compassionate service to others. They were building a community, not just surviving an apocalypse. They were rebuilding the very fabric of humanity, one act of compassionate service at a time, demonstrating the enduring power of love in a world desperately in need of hope. Their actions spoke volumes, a silent yet powerful testimony to the transformative power of a faith lived out not just in words, but in deeds of selfless compassion. The challenges remained. The future was uncertain, but the unwavering faith in their hearts, coupled with their dedication to service, gave them the strength and courage to face whatever lay ahead. They were a beacon of hope in a dark world, and in the quiet moments of reflection, they could hear the gentle whisper of God's approval, a comforting assurance of His enduring presence and steadfast love. The faint, yet persistent, embers of hope, once a mere flicker, had grown into a bonfire of faith, illuminating their path toward a future where compassion and service reigned supreme.